Do you tap into the Robert Sepper show
No, I mean, I'm aware of him.
channel?
Okay, hold on. Okay, you have to go and come back.
Oh my God, it happened so quickly.
Hmm. Hey guys, again in just a second, and then we will get this show on the road. But so far, it looks like I'm by myself anyway. So if anyone is there, say hello. Say hello. All right. Waiting for Dani to come back. Laner, hello. Hello. All right, here's Dani back.
Can you hear me? Is it weird?
Nope, sounds great.
Awesome.
So you were asking me while we wait for the children to file into the classroom. You were asking about if I ever tap into the Robert Sepper world. So
Correct.
mostly no, I'm aware of who he is, and like I've watched two things over the years that people have sent me of him. But I can tell from watching his video or his Instagram that he lives right near me because he is often walking around the same place that I exercise here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So he must live in this neighborhood. So yeah, that's all I know about him.
Well, I'm guessing, I'm new to his channel, but I think he starts off each video at like a different place. So once was like a Middle Eastern restaurant in Encino, and once was like he was in Italy, and he's always, but my sense is that he lives in the San Fernando Valley.
There's like all of his Instagrams are always from Lake Balboa Park. And so like, which is
I
where
love
I
that
go
park.
exercise here, right? When I'm in
Yeah.
town here. So I'm assuming he probably lives in the neighborhood.
I've been deep diving. It's helping me like catch up. I feel like the places where I've been like conspiracy theorist remiss and I have like a little piece of the puzzle or I've heard this thing, I feel like he's finally giving me like a grounded foundation on like the secret space program and what really happened with the Nazis. So I'm into it.
All right. Well, it's always good for us to inform ourselves in the areas in which we have been lacking. One of these days, I'll do something like that myself. I'm just kidding.
You already know that stuff.
I know that stuff. Well, there's plenty of things that I don't know, right? There's areas of the conspiracy tapestry that have just never really interested me,
Yeah.
and so I haven't gone there. And then there's also like areas that are sort of new, and that even though like there's some areas that are newer, but that feed narratives that I have decided either aren't true, I'm not interested in, or are true but not the point. And so I don't give that much mind to them anymore, even though there's been like new information piled on top of that. So like sometimes I feel like it wouldn't be bad just to like taste test so that I understand what people are talking about when they bring those things up, and usually when I go and sort of dip into any of that, it is what I thought it would be. But I don't like to assume that I'm foolproof. So every once in a while I wade into some of those territories. But
Well, also it's where my interests lie now. Like
yeah.
I've been, I'm fascinated with Antarctica. I'm into how the Nazis like really run the whole show. So for me, it's not painful to get through. Like I'm into it.
Yeah, that I mean that the Nazi rabbit hole is like that was a really fascinating. I mean, I still dip in there here and there as it comes up. I now see it as something completely different than I used to see it as, right? But it was never boring. Right? I'm very offended by things that are boring. So
For sure. For sure.
right? So anytime I can take something that's boring and slot it into not true, don't care, or true but not the point, that makes me very happy.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what I'm tussling with the law, all these law courses that I'm taking. I want them to not be boring.
Mhm. I mean, I got really into that stuff for a period of time. Now, like things that are boring and tedious are greatly enhanced by meth. And since I don't use meth anymore, I have no patience for that stuff. But mostly like what I realized is it's at least I haven't, I'm not saying that there isn't a person who exists that this isn't true for, right? But like in my observations, that most people who like get really, really into that, it sort of takes over everything that they're worried about, right? That their focus is, and it usually adversely affects their health. It usually adversely affects their relationships, and it usually, you know, maybe it takes them off of one list but puts them on another list, right? Kind of thing.
Well,
So,
what I'm learning is totally the opposite. That actually doesn't put us on lists, and I'm learning from people who are still maintaining their health and not necessarily like feeding off the fight. So
right,
because I'm seeing a new community of people around this
right,
who are not repellent to me,
right.
it's shifting my openness. Plus, it feels necessary to learn. You know, it's like flossing's boring too, but I still do that.
Oh, I love flossing.
What?
I love flossing. And I also like, I use one of those like rubber tip dental poke things that you poke between your teeth.
Oh, I use that on my gums.
It hurts really bad and I like it.
So it's just like masochistic pleasure for you.
So yeah, no, I mean, a couple of
That's
things.
why you love Eric Weinstein.
No, that's too painful. I can't, right? So I did learn a lot of interesting things that I keep in mind, but to be clear, the main reason that I don't spend a lot of time on that topic is it's just boring to me, right? And so like if someone came along and made it really interesting, and certainly like if there's like a healthy representative that like of that those ideas, then that makes it more attractive. But at the period of time when I was sort of dipping into that, which was around like 2011, 2012 or whatever, it wasn't well represented.
No, totally. It's not until like super recent because everyone, I mean, I've taken classes and I've read different books and they're all insane people, but this is a new crop. And I think you might be able to stomach Brandon Joe Williams. He's not necessarily a pillar of health, but he's hilarious and weird. And I feel like just for him being his authentic self, it might help you as it helps me, like get the medicine down.
We'll see. I don't know. I mean, I'm still like, I had an experience this weekend that was so like, literally, I felt like I was cymatically vibrated apart and back together. And that's just how you like disappear when you don't want to and come back when you do. And so like, right. Like, I'm not sure that any of this actually matters if I can understand like how to run that program on a predictable schedule. Right?
I get that. I look forward to you teaching the rest of us to do that.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is like when you're watching it happen, it is really interesting how like some people like are able to remain coherent through that process and others start to look really discombobulated and like they have like, you know, a second version of themselves emerging from one version, you know, from the solid version, and like they can't stand straight and they're like doing weird things that make it look like they're having a you know, like a Tourette syndrome kind of right? But other people are just able to be totally coherent through it, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's very interesting. There was like one noise that seemed to like pop open the portal, and then from that point on, it was like it was like being in one of those chairs at Brookstone, but like at an intensity level that like sometimes it was difficult to stand, right? But it was so interesting just to watch the room sort of do that, right?
Right? Was all this at the dance party?
Yes. I mean,
okay.
I've had all kinds of like wacky, weird stuff go on, but what's happening now is that is different than really what was happening for me when I used to go to parties all the time. Technology is constantly getting better and better, like that with sound and lighting and whatever. But my understanding of how the processes work is much higher. Like I understand like a level of things about like science and physics and sound and lighting, sonics and optics, and just, you know, sort of energetics that I did not 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And so when something is happening, like I start I start looking, I start observing, and I start seeing what is actually like the constants, like what is changing, what is staying the same, what seems to be the stimulus for when something happens, what seems to always go together. And so I have like a better idea of how whatever is happening and what it actually means. And so it creates like it adds a layer to the experience that is, even more than what it was for me before. Like lots of people are there just having a good time at the party. I've always been on this other deeper hunt, right? But now it's like I feel like I'm able to, without going backstage, it's like I'm backstage because I'm observing, sort of the where the things come together to make it happen in a way that only generally somebody who was making it happen would know to look there, right? Because I've just paid attention for so long. And then it's crazy how like whatever rabbit holes I'm down, those tend to become the topic of the visual shows whenever I, like on the screen with these, and so obviously the people who are doing sound and lighting are interested in the same topics on some level. And, it would make sense that everything is always telling us exactly what it is. But there was a time when I wouldn't have thought that. There was a time when it would have been like, oh, that just looks really cool. And it's like, no, what I'm looking at is actually an explanation of the technology that is producing it on some level. Like everything has its own, everything is always announcing what it is if you understand how to sort of read the language, right? So, and it's always nice when like Laura went to the party this weekend and she doesn't usually go. Right. And so instead of me trying to draw pictures or explain to her afterwards what I think, I can be like, look right there. See that? See when that does that? And when that person walks in front of it, how it looks like this. And she's like, oh, oh, okay. And then she's staring at that point all night, waiting for it to happen again, the thing that I told her was going to happen or whatever it is. Right. So it creates like a level of certainty. And then I can have an ongoing discussion with that person after having been there about what was happening and why and what does that mean, as opposed to someone having to rely on what I'm saying and then trying to erect a conversation around an idea that hopefully I did a good job explaining. Right.
And was she always seeing what you were seeing? Were there ever moments where she's like, maybe those mushrooms were super strong?
Well, I mean, I think she's attracted to sometimes to different things than what I'm attracted to in terms of like where her attention goes, right? And sometimes she notices things before, like she'll notice an effect, but she hasn't figured out what's causing it to look like that. So she'll be like, "Did you see that?" And then I'll go kind of observe it for a while. I'm like, "I think this is what is happening," right? But well, there's no doubt that also the mushrooms are strong, right? But there's a constancy to it that it isn't just like, oh, if you missed it for 1 second, it's gone. All right. And that constancy, like that it's there and you can observe it over a period of hours, right? And from different angles makes it like less reliant solely on the mushrooms. Like the mushrooms act as sort of like the slight defocalizer or like the adjustment in how you're sort of perceiving things that like, maybe draw your attention to something that you might otherwise miss. Right. And then, but I can go over and like touch and see what thing is really there and what thing is a figment of my imagination. Right. So anywho, but yeah, I hadn't felt, there was something uniquely strong about the level of sort of vibration and cymatics that I was feeling. And it certainly wasn't necessarily the biggest sound system I've ever, definitely wasn't the biggest sound system. It wasn't the most mushrooms or the strongest mushrooms. But the way that they're becoming more and more intricate in the angle, the way that they set up the sound and lighting to create effects. And then there was these sort of panels in the middle of the floor that weren't producing sound, but were filtering sound that was creating some of the effect. And like when I would stand near there, it was creating this feeling like there was a mirror right next to me that was reflecting, like that I could look at myself in almost. Like it was so fascinating, right? And then it was like looking through the mirror to the person on the other side of the mirror. And I only noticed that when I was near those boxes that had like this kind of screen filter stuff. It was very interesting. It was very so much of it is creating the illusion of, the appearance of, the feeling of, right, as opposed to an actual thing. And I just think that's so neat that you can make something, you know, something is happening, and then on top of it, you can make it seem like also something else is happening, right? So yeah. So that.
Cool.
All right, so shall we? I don't have any clips today because as you guys can all tell, I'm still in Los Angeles, or at least those who've been with us for enough time to remember my office in Los Angeles. I am still here. My father is still in the hospital. Hopefully, he is going home today. Yeah, so I'm here, and I've been preoccupied with that. But I have been watching and listening to a lot of things, so I'll have a lot of things to talk about. And I think Dani has a few clips. So.
I do have a few clips. Where do you want to start?
Well, we could start. Let's start with Eric Weinstein, since we've been talking masochistic. Let's start with Eric Weinstein. So we'll go Eric Weinstein, and then we'll go Brett and Eric, and then we can move on from there. How's that?
Okay, that's great. I'm sorry to say it, but I have 3 clips from that.
I love it.
3 iterations of Lord Eric. All right, I'm pulling it up. Did you tap into this at all?
No, I saw it. It kept coming through the feed, both like on the recommended thing, right? But I just
Pro Plus is now 40% off for this Black
I
Friday.
have a hard time looking at him.
And this one particularly, I mean, I get it. Here's my question. Constantine and his co-host, they are allegedly comedians, yes?
Right.
I've never heard either of them be funny on their show, like not even one time.
Well, they
I don't get it.
Like I would say, like, it used to be light and playful, right? But the more like rabidly Zionist and the more obvious it has become who's paying their bills, the less light, playful, and funny it's become. Unless like watching them make fools of themselves is light and funny, which it kind of is, right? But they have totally beclowned themselves, and not in a funny way.
And Eric does say that this one's interesting, because you can tell by the end they've tired of him the way a lot of people who interview the Weinsteins do. And it was like harder and harder for them to maintain like the illusion of, I won't say civility, they were always civil, but like friendliness.
Yeah.
But he did mention them speaking at the Ark. So we know that he's, part of, Constantine is part of that whole apparatus.
Yes, because he's in London, and they did the Ark in London. That was Jordan.
May I please have permission to share the screen?
Yes, I will grant you permission, oh Dani. There we go.
Okay. So obviously fair use. And here we go.
And we have no other choice. So we need to roll the dice and just see what happens.
Well, but you're rolling the dice squared. Elon, for example, is the other person I would associate with. I mean, I guess my view of Elon, I've really never met him. I've started minor correspondence with him. I view Elon as being like the only adult on planet Earth at the moment. And he's like completely chaotic, like your friend's crazy dad, but definitely dad. So I think Elon.
That's it, just for that one.
Isn't it weird how desperately both Weinstein brothers want to befriend Elon, and how neither of them seem to have any success doing it?
I just don't even know what to do with that statement. I don't think Elon is the only adult in the room when he's the only one in the room, or when he's in the room with a bunch of children. There's nothing adult about Elon Musk.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That was just a trifle. Now we get to the meat of the matter. So as always, this feels like the point, aside from kissing up to Elon and then shooting for a job at the end. You know what? Let's do the shooting for the job at the end, just because it's so fun to see him pander.
And then we'll go back to the point.
And then we'll go back to the point.
Awesome.
Just a little, we're just sandwiching it.
Very good.
This is the premium Garmin duffel 45 liter by Half Day.
Oh,
It's a transforming
of course.
2-in-1 travel duffel bag for long weekends.
Getting
Alright.
farther and farther from what worked by making laws. And what I hope and pray, and I don't care whether I get a job in Washington or not, is that somebody calls and says, Eric, what do you know about unfucking the United States of America? Because we have made so many bad laws.
That was just his pitch. And then he goes on to sell himself a little bit more. And then they can't even take it. And they're like, we're done.
Is this going to be where he finally reveals that part that is unknown at this time, but will become known later from the Johnny? Remember when Johnny Vedmore was reading his paper?
Yeah.
Remember that there was a yet unknown element, right? Maybe he now knows the element and he will reveal it when someone calls him to Phoenix the Republic.
It's interesting because in reality, Eric thinks he's the only adult on planet Earth. But because
Correct.
he sees how close Elon is to Trump, he's like, okay, this is going to be my side door in, as though he's not even part of whatever.
Right.
All right. So here we get to the meat of the matter, fair use.
And the toddlers. The easiest part of free speech, and I very much appreciate Elon for doing this, is opening the pipe and keeping it open. The hardest part is the culture, so that it never occurs to anyone to act like this except for a tiny fringe few. The culture of free speech is absolutely about the social restraint of dangerous, bad speech. This idea that the cure for bad ideas is good ideas is nonsense. Ideas compete on fitness. We have a fitness landscape where a really bad idea can easily outcompete good ideas, better ideas. The only thing that works is if people of good character use something that precedes cancellation. Cancellation is a terrible concept. I don't know where it came from. But shunning, social shunning of bad speech in a free speech environment is not the same thing as saying you cannot say that. There's an important concept, and I don't know why this isn't taught. I don't know where it went. It's mustn't. Mustn't isn't shouldn't, and mustn't isn't can't. You must not say or do certain things in a free speech environment, because if free speech doesn't pay a dividend, gentlemen, it's...
I just want to pause, but I do want us to listen a little bit more. What is the difference between mustn't and shouldn't?
Yeah, I can see the difference between must not and can't, right? And shouldn't and can't, but I can't see a huge difference between must not and should not.
I mean, I'm a word nerd, and in both instances, you have a perceived authority figure attempting to tell someone else what they can and cannot do or say. It's the same.
I think maybe what he's saying is can't is too harsh, shouldn't is not strong enough, and must not has a little bit more like it's more imperative than should. Must is more imperative than should, right? So I think maybe that's what he's maybe that's the sort of midline he's trying to walk, but mostly I agree that there's not a significant difference.
I feel like he thinks that mustn't is more civilized because that's kind of his new shtick today. Right. But it's also interesting given how many interviews we've seen him in where he doesn't believe that free speech is absolute. Right. But clearly, like, the feedback hasn't been so great on that. So now he's just taking another way in to controlling speech.
You know what else is I just thought about this the other day, and then I just popping back to my head now. I think his wife is Indian too.
That's right.
Pia Mullaney.
You forgot that.
Her name is Pia Mullaney. So for those people who are not sure what I'm talking about, if you head on over to wordspodcast.locals.com and use the promo code welcome to words, all one word in capital, you will find that we have recently posted an episode titled Transcendental Hinduism and the Nuclear Cult. And you've heard us a few times here probably refer to the amount of influence that Indian people had in this sort of election cycle, not American Indians, East Indian culture, right? So If you guys can go check that out. But I had forgotten about his wife, right? Oh, what's interesting is when I typed in, this is interesting, Dani, considering what we were doing in that episode. Look at this. When I typed in Eric Weinstein wife, there's a picture of him with Tulsi Gabbard.
That's
Right?
weird.
But this is his wife, and she does look like she is some, either Indian or some country that surround Bangladesh, Sri Lanka.
No, she's Indian. I've heard him talk about it.
Okay, but that is weird, right? That Tulsi Gabbard popped up as part of this because we had been doing some diving on her previous husband, which is not Eric Weinstein. But okay, so that I just remembered that his wife was Indian too. So we have another notch in that belt. Okay, yeah. I mean, he is trying to pretend that he's like the grown-up, civilized one, right? The more sophisticated one than his stupid little brother, right? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to continue with this, but
Please continue. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that piece. All right, still fair use.
Going to go away. The whole key to free speech is the culture of self-restraint, decency, and prosperity, so that people feel that they've got a lot to lose.
Yeah.
I find it just so weird. I'm sorry I keep stopping us, but like that he's not talking about the limits on speech. He's not talking about it from like the institutional point of view. He's talking about it from the social point of view.
We must censor ourselves.
Yeah, which is something that he'll bring up later in terms of the environment and pollution and how it should be kind of like free market commodified. It's weird. He's running a different program this show. Don't worry, he's still annoying as fuck, but continuing.
Yes, the problem with that is the internet is anonymous and for very good reasons. And we would want to protect some anonymity, I think. But an anonymous environment, because of the way human beings are, we've all been in a car behind a windscreen. But human beings don't seem to be capable of behaving in that way without the threat of repercussions, right? And if you're anonymous, there is no threat of repercussions because you're anonymous.
So you've made us some assumptions that
I have.
we should have this very high level of anonymous speech, and that the real problem is coming from anonymous accounts.
Well, so look, Jordan's talked about this. Jordan Peterson's made this point that the anonymous trolls on the internet behave in the way that they behave because they're anonymous. So his shortcut was, well, we got to end anonymity. And a lot of people, I think rightly said, there are some problems with this because anonymity is actually highly valuable. It's valuable for journalists in Iran. It's valuable for this. It's valuable for that, right? It's valuable for people to be able to retain that anonymity in certain situations. You're frowning at me. I'm just laying out the argument, right?
No, I want to make sure we don't build in assumptions. I don't think that we know that Jordan Peterson is wrong. I don't think we know.
Well, wrong and right, these are very simplistic concepts. The point I'm making is there are trade-offs to everything. Yeah. You could ban anonymity on the internet, and that would have lots of positive benefits. It would also have lots of terrible consequences.
Sure.
Right? You could also not ban anonymity on the internet, and then you'd get what we have now.
So those are the two shelling points.
Yeah.
And then you have all the interesting stuff in between them. And as a guy who's never opened borders or closed borders or never pro-life or pro-choice, et cetera, I don't know how the shelling points completely derange us, but you can have anonymous accounts in which you have to become known to the platform in order to open one
which will get hacked, and then the government of Iran is going to find out where you live.
So
there were so many things being set up in that small exchange. Wow. Okay, there was like a lot going on there that I think was highly indicative of things to come, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always, I love how it's always like Russia and Iran, we have to be fearful of, right, kind of thing, when the deepest invader of privacy and stuff like that is always Israel. And the United States, right? Yeah.
But it's interesting how that seems to come up on all these same people's podcasts. Like it just regularly, like just ekes out in each show.
And this idea that you can maintain your anonymity with the peons, but to the authorities, you have to be known.
Correct.
When that like totally defeats the purpose of anonymity.
Also, the consistency of this whole, consilience SFI web on every podcast since the election, Elon is our fucking hero. And he is, a god. He is the patron saint of free speech. Like, this revisionist historying going on with him through these guys right now is so over the top. It's so overt.
Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah. Remember I said last week about did I say it to you? Was it to you that I said the thing about, yeah, I did, about, Seven Bomar had done that show about Marduk and about how Marduk was in Elon. So somebody else, and it's like I've been talking to so many people about so many things, sometimes it's hard to remember who told me what. Someone else told me about having seen a video where someone who used to work for the Musk family when Elon was a child, like was talking about how the Elon Musk's family got kicked out of South Africa and had to move to Canada because of something that like Elon had done when he was a child, and that it was something of like a sort of metaphysical or spiritual nature. So like what I'm wondering if I haven't seen the video yet, like, or whatever, but the person who told me is someone who generally gives me interesting and good information. That if there's something in his bloodline that indicates that he is, descendant of the gods or something like that, and that these people who are like worshiping him, either rightly or wrongly, have some sort of belief or understanding that there is a quality about him that separates him from the average Joe. That doesn't do much for me, whether even if it was true or whatever it is. But all of these people are part of groups and cults and sects that believe some delusional things about reality, right? In my mind, anyway.
Right.
And so
right.
I could totally like it is not beyond the pale to me that like the people who are like either in the know or like desperately trying to be in the know have some delusional belief that like Elon is some sort of second coming like on earth or whatever, and that's what and that they want to curry favor so that they can have a spot at the pearly gates or whatever the fuck it is, right? So
that totally resonates. And given the screenshots I sent you last night, which we will unpack later, it seems very clear to me, like I could buy into, okay, he did something metaphysical and weird that scared the shit out of South Africa and got them booted, but I don't think that makes him a god. I think that makes him an alien.
Certainly, 100%. But for a lot of these people who are really interested in technocracy, those two things might not be different.
Oh, that's true. He's their god. He's their lizard god.
Right. Right. Like I'm not ascribing a good or a bad, whatever it is to that, but like,
right.
Like whatever, he's coming wielding some kind of either power or access to power or perceived access to power that they've been looking for all of their travel, all of their lifetime. I don't know what these fucking people tell themselves, but the shit that I used to hear when I would go to like church or temple or something when someone sounds delusional to me, and that's just another version of that, right? Like it's another, whatever your religion is, there's characters at the center of it, and then they always have people on earth who sort of represent or resemble or resonate that God, right?
Let me ask you, do you think any of the people we cover, and I am specifically thinking of the Weinsteins, have like those implants, whatever that technology is, where they have voices in their head telling them that they're so great, they're so smart? Like, how many of these people are wrestling with that technology running them right now? Like, we always talk about them as though they're totally free actors. And I just wonder, like, how much are they aware of? Where is technology running them? How many alters does Eric Weinstein have?
I mean, it's like, Elisa and I used to talk about this a lot, and Elisa does talk about this a lot. how like all of the people that we look at as like the perpetrators of the mind control are under even a greater degree of mind control than the people that they're perpetrating it on.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, you know, and that handlers are also under mind control and,
Right.
you know, whatnot. So then the other thing is like, if there's, let me think about how I want to say this, right? So like in the layer of reality that we're instructed that we're supposed to exist on, they have pathologized things like schizophrenia, bipolar, ADD, even some autoimmune diseases that have to do with processing light or sound differently. But for people who are allowed to either exist in or be aware of some other layers of the cake, right, that they're instructed that they're allowed to dilly-dally in that, for them it's a superpower. Autism is another one of these types of things, right? For them it's like some sort of extrasensory perception, right? And so and especially if you're either being trained in or assisted in managing that. So if the voices that schizophrenics hear are real, they just struggle to identify like what belongs at sort of what level, but someone has been coached or trained or helped to be able to navigate all of that, then there's extra information there, wherever that's coming, whether that is technologically created, whether it's the multidimensional, omnidirectional space-time continuum nature of our reality that, right? So like it's all question of sort of access and then perception and navigation.
Okay.
Right. And so the same gods that make the crazy person at the insane asylum on lockdown for some of these, you know, higher ups, you know, are where they get their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And so it is.
yep. Okay. So are we done with Eric and ready to move on to Eric and Brett? Or is there
Oh
more?
yeah, I keep forgetting about that.
So we will cover this in more depth, probably on one of our regular shows. Once again, wordspodcast.locals.com. But the channel Canadian Patriot, which is where we discovered Johnny Vedmore, or Dani discovered Johnny Vedmore and shared it with me, doing deep dives on Eric Weinstein. That channel put out a documentary about Eric and Brett Weinstein that was called Phoenix. Was it called? What was it called? Phoenix. Phoenix the Republic, or what was it called?
Look it up. Kim Rose sent that to us, so thank you, Kim.
Oh, thank you, Kim Rose.
Well, what was your take on it while I look at
So it was like about a 40-minute documentary about the role that the Weinstein brothers have played in what's going on in this country and in the sort of the world right now, and basically tying it back to the Operation Phoenix, which had to do with you know, the things that the Western Alliance did in like the Vietnam and Indonesian and some of the wars in Asia. There we go. Like a Phoenix, the death and rebirth of America, right? So it was basically tying what Brett and Eric are participating in now to the Operation Phoenix, which was a program that was run out of the intelligence agencies and Tavistock, you know, through the 60s and 70s, in like the United States, through the military and things that we were doing in Asia, and basically tying it together through this line that Brett used at the Rescue the Republic rally, where he said that we need to phoenix the Republic, basically burn the Republic down in order to rebuild it of the ashes. And we're looking at things that Brett and Eric have done previously in their life that connect to things that are going on right now, and then the sort of various positions and roles that they've sort of played to either make something happen or pretend that they don't understand what's happening but be the lucky interceptor of the ball for the solution or whatever it is. And it So there was moments, it's about a 40-minute documentary. I'm sure we'll break it down more extensively at some point, but people can go watch it. I'll come back later and put it in the description or the comments here if people want to go watch it. At some moments they lost me a little bit. Like at some moments it sort of lost the trail, right? Like it lost the thread. But at other moments I thought there was good, like they landed some good zingers for sure. But what's interesting about the Phoenix program is like there's a book about it by a guy named Douglas Valentine. And that program that program really emanates out of Michigan State University, which is where there's a lot of MK Ultra related things that so come out of there. That's also the university that Larry Nassar committed most of his crimes at. Right. And so that school has always been pretty tightly wound into mind control, MK Ultra, sexual blackmail, all of these things that are circling around everything that's happening sort of politically right now. And then of course, Tavistock always is sort of the original lab for a lot of this. And I felt like some of the things that were discussed, for me anyway, sort of reaffirm the way that I've talked about, like there's some things about the Weinstein family that make me think of my own family and some of the connections that my father's family have to the Orient and to some of these ideas, some of these sort of more, in some ways communist, in other ways fascist type of ideas of how the world should be run and whatnot. And so like, I think there's something there. I don't know that they got all of the details correct, right? And I don't know, I'm not familiar enough with the woman who had put it together and was narrating it to know what her filter is. I have a few ideas, but I'll reserve passing those along. But again, whether everything is correct or not, I know there are some things that were pretty definitely factually correct about things that Eric and Brett have said and done in the past, and how interesting it is that they're now saying and doing certain other things almost as if like they threw the ball back in the 80s or 90s and now they're there to catch the ball now, right? Kind of thing. Like, how did we know the ball was going to come flying this way? Oh, because we threw it, right? And pretending like they just happened to be somewhere with the ability to help at this time. Right. So, but I think I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to withstand the amount of information that is piling up about them, and about how we should have really a lot more questions about why we're taking these people seriously as anything other than part of the problem.
Yeah. I feel the same. There were parts of it that I felt like, this feels like you're reaching. And not pulling it all together. But at the same time, I appreciate that other researchers who I respect, because I do like Canadian Patriots' work, are cluing into this. And we're all picking up, like everyone's spidey sense is up with these guys. I did think what they put forward about Eric's proposed, like what he was proposing about migration, was that when he was with the UN, like earlier on, set up what's going on now. So I thought that was a good piece that they put together for sure.
Right. And the weirdness about Brett just happening to have experience at that exact spot in Panama. And I have no way of knowing for sure. I haven't been able to go do my due diligence. And even if I were to put time into it, I don't know that I could see enough documents or evidence to know. But if he is intentionally conflating a Chinese camp of people who are there to do construction on a bridge with a Chinese camp that is separately migrating for some reason, that doesn't seem beyond the pale for like what something he might do. If he's doing that, and his history with the military and the Smithsonian and that location in Panama, which he even talked about in his thing with Michael Yon and on Tucker Carlson and whatever it is. Like these, it's too convenient. These two, he's just all the places where a thing is happening, and he always happens to have the necessary wisdom to understand the truth about the situation. It's just yeah, it's not believable to me.
Yeah,
It's not
agreed.
believable. You know, and yeah, like if you're creating this Chinese false flag to sort of cover for the forced migration that your family encouraged, right? And your kind of thing, you know, because people caught on to it maybe a hair too quick, and so you're there trying to punt it to punt the ball to someone else. It's just yeah, like whether at this point, whether every single detail that everyone has put forward about Brett and Eric is exactly right or not, they have with their own words impugned themselves enough to the point that nobody should be listening to them.
But look how many people listen to them.
Right.
It's another intelligence test we're failing.
Yeah.
You know, it just occurred to me that they remind me of the Menendez brothers.
Totally.
Right?
Right.
Like, I kind of wonder if they are.
Ah,
right age.
So there just happened to be a new documentary about the Menendez brothers. Did you see it?
No.
It came out just not that long ago, like really just a few weeks ago. Laura and I watched it, and it's really interesting because now, since that documentary has come out, they're considering giving them a new trial, right? Because so that they can get out. And it's so the timing is very interesting, and like who knows? It's like entirely possible that like they were another duo that were in the running to play the role that the white, right? I'm telling you right now, there'd be doppelgangers everywhere. I think there's other people in other cities at like whenever I go to parties, I always see someone that like looks like a clone of someone I know, like in Austin, or someone I knew from parties in New York, and it's not them, but they look almost exactly like them, and they do the same like weird dance move or whatever it is. I'm like, oh, there's like a factory that produces ravers, and there's like one of each type in every city or whatever it is. So it would be the same in something like this, right?
Okay, it's interesting that you brought this up, and I'll tell you the whole story a different time, but it was just last week that I looked in the mirror and my eye just caught this kind of scar on my earlobe. And I remembered you asking me, do you remember anything weird that happened at our gymnastics sleepovers? And I said, yeah, all the burns that I had behind my ears when I would come home. And you said, those were from the cloning headbands. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And I never thought about it. And then just last week, I was like, wait a minute. Does that mean there are clones of me running around?
So it's
Am
not
I the clone?
It's not cloning headbands. It's what it is there's an experience that I used to refer to as trips to the cloning centers, right? Which is not necessarily the most exact description of what's actually happening, but it was like what the experience felt like at the time that I was having them a lot. And it always was accompanied by like blisters, either like right here or behind the ears, which led me to believe that like there was something being done with sound that was being directed at my ears that was creating this, like the evidence, right? Because whenever I would have one of these experiences, for a few days after that, I would have all kinds of weird stuff, like these weird blisters on my ears that were producing crystals. Right.
But how did you know to equate that experience with cloning per se?
Because what the experience would be in the sleep state or the dream state would be like me trying to operate a body that didn't feel like my own. So it was like my consciousness in a body. So if you do look into the reports people have about this or the research on this type of topic, like that it is, you know, your consciousness that is driving these bodies that are not your own natural. There's all different kinds of techniques and technologies behind this, right? And again, like I'm speaking from the perspective that I had when I was like in that space. Like maybe my opinions about some of this are a little more nuanced now, and maybe some things I used to think I don't fully think anymore, and maybe I have some other ideas and whatnot, but for the sake of keeping the conversation on track, I'm like referring back to about my 2017 position on this, which is where you and I talked about this.
Yep.
Right. And so those experiences always came together, that I would have one of those. And again, feels different than like a regular dream or a lucid dream or whatever it is. But it was always about having to try to perform in a body that didn't quite feel like my own. And so having to like really use quite a bit of like memory and intellectual power to try to force the body to do what otherwise in my regular body comes naturally. Right. And then just, you know, there being always some sort of symptoms or evidence with my body that I'd had an anomalous experience in the days that sort of followed. And the stuff behind the ears is definitely, you know, something I very rarely have anything like that anymore, but for a period of time in my life, that was happening all the time. Right. So
Was that when you were a kid?
Well, I think it happened some when I was a kid, but when I really started to like notice it and notice the patterns of what went along with it was during the period of time from like 2010 to like 2017 or 18.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And then once like Laura and I were living together, it happened a lot less. I can't say that it's never happened since then, but it's a lot less.
So let me ask you, because
I felt like I was leaving my body.
Right. You had asked me at the time if I remembered anything weird about the sleepovers, and that was my memory, but you weren't having that experience at that age. So what weird shit was happening to you at the sleepovers?
No. So like, okay. So when I was little, right. And I didn't like, when you're little, your idea of what feels what way is different. You don't have like this ability to differentiate between like a regular dream, a lucid dream, like a memory, right? Like some things kind of blend together in a way that like later, as you recognize how you feel about certain experiences, you go, oh yeah, like I used to feel like this when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, I thought it was this, but now I think maybe it was that because right? So I would definitely have like missing time at the sleepovers for sure. And I definitely didn't want to go to sleep. And there was like I didn't want to go to sleep because they had Pac-Man machines and stuff like that. But like all the other kids were sleeping and I was not sleeping. Right. And then I would wake up in the sleeping bag and be like, wait a second, what am I doing here? I was like at the Pac-Man machine 5 minutes ago or whatever it is. Right. Enough experiences like that. And I went to many sleepovers at the gym. And there was always, it was just weird. Right. It was like, it was weird. But I can't, so, and then there was the time that I like got this Pac-Man elbow, which turned into an injury for a long time, which that was, it was kind of weird. It was like my elbow felt fine. And then all of a sudden I couldn't move my elbow. So I don't know if I really got Pac-Man elbow or if something happened where I like hurt my elbow or whatever it was. But, no, but that was like when I started noticing this as an adult, I also remembered that I used to get these things behind my ears when I was a kid. I would not have said as a 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, I would not have said I went to a cloning center last night, right? But there's a tone that, you know how certain memories have like a texture or a tone or a feel to them?
Yes.
The sleepovers had the same texture, tone, feeling that some of these quote trips to the cloning center type of dreams or whatever have to them. Right. And so I classify like sometimes you don't have all the information about something, but you kind of group them together based on like sensory, texture, tone, feel. Right.
Yeah.
I hope everybody enjoyed the aside.
All right, moving on. I have Ken Wilber, or we could talk about Mike Benz.
Okay, so let's go.
Mike Benz feels meatier.
Let's go Mike Benz.
Yeah.
So I listened to the 2 hours and 45 minutes of Mike Benz on the Joe Rogan podcast yesterday. Did it come out yesterday or the day before? Yesterday. I listened to it yesterday. I think I listened to the whole thing yet. Maybe it came out the night before. This again feels like just last week I was like, we need to start getting this term that he uses into the lexicon. Remember, I literally just said this last week on our show
What term?
about the consensus of democratic institutions versus.
Oh yeah, and I actually did. I know we're not going to play clips, but I did pull that clip, and it was great to hear him say it.
So remember how last week I said that Glenn Greenwald was responding to our many inquiries about why he never had, right? It felt like that. It felt like that I queried the question in the right way to get the response from the simulation of producing him on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Fun.
Right. And so
it's like you passed the next level on Pac-Man.
right, there you go. Well, I used to be able to make the Pac-Man, the machine speak like Chinese. It would like have code on it, right? Like it would, because I'd go past the last level or whatever. I was pretty good. So what was interesting is Joe hardly said anything. Mike Benz really just gave a demonstration for 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yep.
And he laid down enough evidence there that like if people, and I've never heard Joe Rogan say this before, but at the end of the episode he said, I'm gonna have to watch this one 3 or 4 times.
Yes.
Right. And so like
I actually listened to the whole thing twice. That's how dense it was, because I was like, there's no way I got all of that in.
I recommend that people listen to his episode on Tucker Carlson back to back with this one, because he used a lot of different examples and he went deeper into some things on one and deeper into the other. But between those 2 podcasts, regardless of where someone is in their awakening, regardless of whether they still think Elon Musk is fighting for free speech, or they think Trump is good or Trump is bad or whatever it is, there's enough evidence laid out by Mike Benz over the course of these 2 podcasts that if people chose to just really hone in on this instead of arguing about a lot of the other stuff, and like if for some reason this resonates hardcore enough with people who we otherwise disagree with and don't trust, but there's something about this one that bothers them, and they're like, we need to make more of this, then like it feels like this is one of those topics that enough people could, if it was converged upon correctly, and we don't let Brett and Eric Weinstein have anything to say about it, then this will be something that people are checking for before they believe someone when they say this person is ensuring free speech online, or that person is ensuring it, or whatever it is, right? Like this, he feels like a clean enough actor, and I like how open and honest he is. He's like, I'm for an American empire. It just needs to be one that serves the Americans. He doesn't have the same positions on everything that you or I do, but his knowledge and understanding and like Encyclopedia Brown like recall of like every little thing lets me know that he has chosen like one lane of the road to keep his eyes glued on for drunk drivers, and he's not taking it off, right? So like, I don't think we don't have to agree about everything for most people who disagree about everything else to say like this is really important, and we should like if we all keep our eyes on this, like maybe we can like move something on this part of maybe we can move this needle a little bit. But yeah, I still think that this is a question. Like we have to start annoying the powers that be with this
Powers
question,
that work.
right? This question all the time of when you say democracy, are you talking about the people, or are you talking about the consensus of quote democratic institutions, unquote?
Now that was one, I think he said it once. Am I correct?
Yeah. He said it more. He said it. He did a better job explaining it on the Tucker Carlson podcast.
Yeah, I didn't hear Joe pick up on it, so it wasn't like that. I don't know how many people who listened to that whole podcast, which was so dense, got that. But I agree, like that is the thing to be harped on. But the way he broke down the diabolical underbelly of the fact-checking paradigm and the Atlantic Council, is that what they were called?
Yeah.
It was so creepy. And it was interesting because of all, like however many years that I've been shadow banned, repressed, had stuff taken down, deleted, it never occurred to me to dig into like, how is that machine running? And so it was really interesting / so creepy to see how they do it in the app that's like giving people, I don't know what their rewards were for like ratting out posts to be immediately taken down. Like the whole thing around the election and that particular, I thought was like really, really compelling and vile and disgusting.
What about that thing where they were at that conference and people couldn't wait to obey and get the answer right? And I like
With their bullshit sticks.
Right. I like that Joe was disturbed by how excited they were to obey.
Whoa. And how they broke down that like in this whole presentation. So it's like this giant space age conference room in like Bahrain or whatever. And there's like this circular stage with like the head of whatever one of these like disgusting companies and then one of his minions. And it's like, I don't know, it felt like it was out of a sci-fi movie, you know, like everyone's staring upon them and they're breaking down like how to spot disinformation. And what Mike pointed out is like it never had anything to do with it being true,
right,
or with what they were taking down being taken down because it was false. And seeing like these little chants and like the
it was like
alliteration.
dismay. It was like dismay, distract,
distort, yeah, and like making it a game and like let me hear it again. It was so creepy.
Right.
I felt like that was a great show, and like for anyone who could, you know, push past if you're over Joe Rogan, it feels like that was like there was a lot of meat in that.
Yeah, and I'll link to the Phoenix documentary. I'll link to both Mike Benz on both Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, so people can go listen to those sort of in tandem if they're interested to hear what we're talking about. But yeah, no, I mean, I appreciated that Joe Rogan just let him speak. He didn't try to take him off track. He didn't, none of that stuff. And Joe looked honestly like a little stunned at like what all he was, you know, hearing and seeing.
He kept saying he was stunned. Do you think there was a hook? Like, did Joe really just like out of the kindness of his heart allow pure truth to be shared with the public without some sort of hook or angle?
So there's a couple of things. Like, I think that he every once in a while he has to like I don't like when I say he, I don't know if I'm talking about him making decisions himself or like the panel that decides what Joe Rogan is going to do.
Correct.
But right, like I don't know if there's like a measurement, like you have to do 83% bullshit and then you get to do 17% things that like you feel good about how true this is and whatever. And some of that hogwash that Mark Andreessen was absolutely, he got torn to shreds about that interview with Mark Andreessen.
Really?
For like, oh yeah, like go do dissidents, Sabby, all those people, like even people who are like nonsense themselves, like Kyle Kulinski had some very fair points about the bullshit that Mark Andreessen was saying. So it's kind of like, okay, if I do that yucky, gross one, can I do one that like actually like doesn't make me feel like I need a shower afterwards?
That makes total sense. That feels like it was like a balancing, like, okay,
so like a cleansing, purifying experience for, yeah, like that.
Well, it was a good one.
It was a good one. Okay. So should we do Ken Wilber or should we do, should I talk about Glenn Greenwald and the Joe Biden thing?
Talk about Glenn Greenwald. That's meatier.
So Glenn Greenwald had two videos he posted today. One was just about the pardoning of Hunter and how hypocritical it was. Like, just that like he just flat out lied, like, right? But also how he like always says that the Trump and the Republicans don't respect rule of law and that they undermine trust in our institutions by saying that decisions are political. He literally did everything he accuses them of doing. And then in the second video, he was reminding us all of Joe Biden probably being the person in our government who like is responsible for the locking up of the most amount of like crack addicts and things like that. And he played a video from him on the floor in the House or in 1986 or on the floor of the Senate like gloating about how if someone is caught with a quarter-sized piece of crack, they're going to jail for 5 years no matter what. Like doesn't the judge gets no choice, they have to or whatever. And he was just so like he was giving him a fucking boner to talk about this and how he had worked with Strom Thurmond, who was like a known segregationist, right, to get this law. And so there's the hypocrisy of what he says about Trump and the right, and then there's the hypocrisy of the treatment of his own son versus other people who don't have the power and resources that they have, but did not even a similar crime, a less crime. Some of them were not doing tax evasion or fraud or trafficking or oil corruption with another country. They just got caught with a quarter-sized piece of crack and they were going to prison for 5 years. And it was like, it was satisfying to like, here laid out point by point all the things that we know are true, right? So my dad, like when this happened the other day, like my dad could acknowledge that it's corrupt and that it was a lie, but he's like, it's okay because it's nothing compared to the things that Trump does. That's like literally what he said.
And what's your response?
I'm like no, Dad. I'm not like, it was just like, no, like they're all corrupt. They're all criminal, right? But like, you have to understand that like, he's literally doing the exact things he accuses other people of and literally rescuing his son from laws that he put on the books himself.
Everything you're saying is totally correct. Everything Glenn is saying is totally correct. I don't know why anyone is surprised. Like,
I'm not surprised. I just, the only part
he's
that
been a hypocrite his entire fake puppeteer, elder abuse reign.
No surprise there, but it's like at this late stage, like my dad is still holding on to, but he's still better than Trump. And it's like, what is the advantage of that? Like, why?
No, the Trump thing is crazy. I mean, I know.
And I say this with no love for Trump, right? Like I can tell you of probably 10 or 15 or 20 crimes that Trump could go to prison for. None of them are the ones that they tried him for or that they tried to go after him for because they don't want to be gone after for the same ones. And so they go out, right? Like they invent crimes to go after him for, because if they went after him for violations of the Logan Act or any of this, that would implicate themselves in having done the same thing. So yeah.
It's totally insane.
Totally insane. Okay, Ken Wilber in drag. Let's do it.
Before we do Wilber, did you hear about Biden giving $1 billion in humanitarian aid to Africa?
No.
So this just happened 2 days ago, but people in North Carolina got like what, $750? What about Lahaina?
Right.
Like, what? No. That degree of humanitarian aid hasn't gone to victims of natural disasters in our own country.
Just the loaded credit cards that the immigrants get when they come over have more than East Palestine or Lahaina or North Carolina. Yeah.
Correct. Oh, what a time to be an American. All right, so Ken Wilber is...
Can you tell people who Ken Wilber is? Because for certainly those who don't watch any of our regular shows probably have no idea who he is over here.
Yeah, so Ken Wilber, he's known for integral theory. And he co-opted Claire Graves' spiral dynamics and kind of rebranded it as his own thing. And he has a very heady, very hyper intellectual, spiritual perspective. People who cite him as teachers are like the conspirituality demons. He's partnered up with Mark Gaffney and Aubrey Marcus in their One World Religion group. So he's definitely a player in the religious spiritual arm of the whole like SFI, like larger one world government total takeover op. Is there anything that I'm missing?
No.
Okay. So he's also been hairless for most of his public career. He's a big like kind of echelon guy. And this is him now. I don't want to be mean, but it just feels so over the top ridiculous. Like, is this an initiation that they're forcing him to do?
Can we show them a picture of what he looked like for most of his career? So
Yes.
that they can understand why it's so strange that someone would make this fashion choice at this late age?
Yes. So Ken Wilber.
Yes.
This is so even as a younger man, even as a young man, right?
Right.
This has always been very consistent. Ken's.
Go roll down, roll down. Roll down. Look at the one with the wig on here. Look at it. Look at it. It's like, what is this? Right?
What is happening?
What is happening?
We saw him we did cover him on something.
It was kind of like when I first started noticing as I was watching the Kardashians to try and understand why people were watching the Kardashians. And I was like, Bruce Jenner's looking awfully weird, right? It has that feel to it. Like, what is going on with this person?
It's so bizarre. The whole interview was so bizarre. Let me see how I can get this down. Okay. So one thing that I noticed throughout this interview, and I'm guessing it's a tick he's taken on, but he keeps licking his fingers. His fingers, his thumbs, just throughout. It's so,
oh no.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre. Okay, so I pulled some clips of the ticks, but it just feels too mean and it's really off topic. What I felt was relevant to share was his.
Did it feel kind of like the Charles Eisenstein thing?
Yes. Oh my God! I didn't tell you. So I messaged Charles, and I said, "So has your denouncing of capital C conspiracies shifted after your boat trip?" Which we talked about on our last show, because he was on. For anyone who didn't see our last show, Eric did a video. It might have been two weeks ago. Charles did a video from a boat where he seemed to be dysregulated. He seemed to be in a fear state. And it was like, you have no idea what's coming. The public is going to freak out. Like, we're not going to be able to handle it. You're not going to be able to wrap your mind around it. So I asked him if his perspective on capital C conspiracies has changed, and he said no. And why do you think that you know my perspective on capital C conspiracies? And I said, well, because when you were on my podcast, you said there are no capital C conspiracies. Did I get that wrong? And I haven't heard back from him.
Right? Did you ask him if he was okay, if that was a hostage video?
Anyway. Okay. So going back to Ken.
Yes. Okay.
He's explained. Well, here we go. Fair use.
Green or postmodern.
Okay. So just so people know, when he'll mention colors green and yellow. This is his version of Claire Graves' spiral dynamics, which is a system that delineates how consciousness evolves and the different levels of consciousness. Just to give us some framework.
Modern. And so Kamala Harris was what we call fractured green. She was generally at the green stage, which meant 30 or 40% of her was green. But she fell trapped to a lot of the problems with green. And one of the main problems with green is it looks at all of the universal rational systems that orange rationality created. Remember, we said there's...
I just want to pause. So in his system, orange is beneath green. Orange is not as developed as green.
Got it.
The rationality, there's not a Protestant chemistry and a Hindu chemistry. There's just chemistry, and it's universally the same system. It's true for everybody. Well, the stage beyond that looks at all those universal systems and says, wait a minute, you've only got one system covering everything, but we've got hundreds of different countries, and each of them have their own multicultural truths. So we have to include those multicultural truths if we're going to ever reach a fully integrated or fully balanced system.
Did you see
But the
it?
problem is green itself cannot
Second time.
discover those unified paradigms that pull all these fragments together. So they just become very fragmented in their thinking. And they can see all the different multicultural systems, but they don't have an idea about how to bring them together or see their unities. And that tended to be Kamala Harris's problem. She had a great deal of difficulty giving unified answers to her questions. And a lot of people just interpreted that as she can't answer questions at all. But what she couldn't do is she couldn't pull together all of the differentiations that she saw in her mind's eye. And that meant that she would just sort of stumble or bumble or say sort of word, they call it word salad.
He's
a lot.
promoting us.
And that's what she
Thanks,
did.
Ken.
Now, Trump was very on.
If anyone of our lovely tribe wants to cut together a supercut of all these people saying word salad that's been going the past few months, that would be such great promo for our show.
Right. Since whenever Kamala Harris got in the race, lots of people talked about word salad. Right. So
I think that's the racist way of saying her name.
it's all promotions for our show.
So basically what he's saying is because Kamala is at a more advanced stage of consciousness and she's speaking to all the races and all the nationalities and all the problems, the issue is that she wasn't able to put her grand expansive consciousness into the right communication paradigm. And so the general public misunderstood that as her being a dumb whore.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. Said that it's weird, like he was a handsome young man and then he looked like a gray alien and now he looks like he's going through a transition at 80 years old. Like it's so strange. I'm not trying to be judgmental. It's just weird to look at.
It's just weird.
It's just weird.
It's a weird choice.
All right, shall we go and see what the kids are saying in the chat room?
Yes.
Hi guys. All right, you guys know what to do. All capital letters. If you got questions, comments, any of that kind of stuff. Hi friends, all of our regulars are here. Hi Nish. How are you?
Hey, Nish.
Everyone's asking me this week when we're doing a show again, so we'll have to whip something up soon. Haven't seen you here in a couple weeks, so nice to see you back. Hi, Laura.
Oh, is this foreplay for you guys?
Laura's in Austin, so it's going to be long foreplay. It's foreplay. All right. So who has questions? Who has comments?
All caps, pretty please. And thank you guys so much for your generous super chats. It is the holiday time. It means the world to us to know that you appreciate us. Thank you so much.
All right. Let's see. Someone's got to have a question here.
Oh, I am going to share a link to my new and improved coloring book because it is the best gift for
Hi,
everyone.
Ashley. Ashley Stinnett in the house.
Ashley, Bigfoot.
Let's see. Ashley, I have some interest. I have an interesting awareness that I came to in the last week or two that I would like to share with you at some point. All right, let's see. No, haven't gotten a notification for me in at least a year. Well, I'm glad you got one today. I'm glad. All right, nobody has any questions, Dani. Oh, here we go.
Great.
Do y'all like 2001: A Space Odyssey or any other Stanley Kubrick films? I'm having deja vu. I feel like this has come up. Has this question been asked here before, or did I answer this question on another show?
Have you answered it in another dimension on the dance floor?
So I've never seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it is my dad's favorite movie. And when he told me that, I was like kind of shocked, right? But I used to, when I was little, hang out at someone from Gio's house that lived on Wonderland Avenue. in Laurel Canyon, which is where the Lookout Mountain Laboratory is, where that was filmed, right? I don't know if you remember Marika Mies. She
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I used to hang out. I used to like hang out at her house there. She lived right across the street.
Okay, I had a thought. This is totally unrelated, but remember Hannah Balfour and Dr. Balfour?
Yeah.
And the Balfours are part of the Masons who like started the whole Masonic Zionism thing. And he did surgery on me. He was like physically inside my body.
He did surgery on all the people from jail that had wrist problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so this has come up before, right? Like this is not, I've thought about this many times. My dad was like chatty with Barney, right?
Yep.
And remember they lived in that huge house across the street from the Greek Orthodox Church?
No, but I believe you.
They lived off of Balboa and like, I want to say like Balboa and maybe Saticoy or Parthenia.
Okay.
And they're like, if they lived like 1 or 2 blocks back from that huge Greek Orthodox church where there used to be like that Greek festival every year or whatnot. And it was kind of an odd spot. Like they lived in like this enormous, obviously very expensive house, but it was kind of like, it was weird. It was like there was 1 block of like super nice houses amongst blocks of otherwise like very average houses. And then a few blocks away, some like kind of lower end kind of thing. But no, I've thought about this before about like what if there was any relationship between these Balfours and the other Balfours that we hear about and whatnot. Right. And remember it was like weird, like her mom was a very big overweight woman and her dad was like this little tiny guy.
Totally.
Right. And her sister was her sister did gymnastics too, but was like in the recreational program with my sister. They were right. I remember my sister didn't like her very much, but I used to think for a while I was like riding to the gym with her sometimes. And so I went to that house like that. I don't even remember if I ever even went inside, but I remember like being, driving in front of that house. And there was that house around the corner from her that had the DeLorean parked in the driveway, right? I don't know, but yeah, I've thought about that before. And it is weird. Like literally every gymnast in the Los Angeles area that needed wrist surgery, whether they went to Geo or the other gyms in the area, went to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Thank
you, Jim Montgomery, for your generous super chat. We love you so much.
And I haven't watched Valley Girl yet, but I'm being a Valley Girl in the Valley.
Why are you not watching this movie? What is the resistance? Let's work through it.
I watch about 2 movies a year, and I will say this: I have not watched a movie since he's been asking. Well, since this conversation last time, but maybe I'll watch it this week if I can find it on one of my outlets to watch it. Maybe I will because I'm here. I'm here by myself now. So
I give you permission to take out of my share of our monthly portion to buy the movie. I will treat you to Valley Girl.
All right. Okay. Does the position your parents had sex to bring us into this realm affect your personality and your thoughts on each of your? Okay. Are you asking me what my thoughts are on each of my parents, or does the position that they had sex in affect how we think about them? Is it the first one or the second one? Let me know, Jim, and then we can answer.
Emily, they're saying that me adding the link to the chat isn't working, so I'm going to share it with you in our chat, and can you share it in the YouTube chat?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
The only Stanley Kubrick film that I have seen, I think, is The Eyes Wide Shut. I think that's the only one I've seen. Maybe I've seen another one, but didn't realize at the time that I saw it that it was a Stanley Kubrick film. But I should watch them. And I know that new A Clockwork Shining movie is supposed to be really good. I've heard that.
Eric Trinkline wants to know why, if cabinet appointees have so many issues, are they not called out before they are appointed or nominated? I think Gates was a bait and switch. I think they knew about all the issues and he was never going to be Trump's choice.
We all knew about the issues before, right? With Gates. We already went through this about Gates a while back, but I think a lot of what Trump is doing is putting people forward that he knows won't get approved so he can say that he tried and, oh, well, the deep state creatures wouldn't let me. So, right. Like, I think that you know, if it would have made more sense to not put them forward this early, to do it like right before the nomination process was going to happen. So there wouldn't have been all of this time for the media to create, you know, all of this hubbub. But it feels like they're like, okay, we'll put some of these out there. They'll get swatted down and it won't be my fault that we can't have them. They'll withdraw themselves.
And it's also a good distraction from like anything real or legit that's going on. So apparently Kubrick did A Clockwork Orange. I did see that. It creeped me out. Did you see that, Emily?
I have not seen, I haven't seen it. I don't think I've seen any of those movies.
And then The Shining, I did like The Shining, but I thought the book was like 1,000 trillion times scarier.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay.
Ira Levin. What did he write? Did he write Portnoy's Complaint? Is that someone different?
Follow the Ira Levin rabbit. The books are the best. Okay. Ira Levin has done a lot of stuff. I've definitely seen Ira, like movies that have been made from Ira Levin books. I can't remember if I've read any Ira
I'm
Levin.
looking it up.
Look, oh, let's see the list.
Because Nish isn't responding fast enough.
Hurry up, Nish.
A Kiss Before Dying, Rosemary's Baby. Oh, he definitely didn't do
Seen
Portnoy's
A Kiss Before Dying.
I saw Rosemary's Baby. Who was in A Kiss Before Dying?
Was it Sean Young or Julia Roberts? Which one? I might be. I think it was.
Was that with Teresa Russell? No, that I'm thinking Black Widow.
A Kiss Before Dying was Sean Young.
She's supposed to be a nut job.
I don't think it's supposed to be. I think she's a nut job.
Although, given media smears, maybe she's the sanest person in the. Although I've seen her on talk shows, she is a nut job.
Michael H., are you saying that you went to Boiler Room this week, or are you saying that one of the books that's being discussed here has a boiler room in it? Boiler Room is a dance music thing. If you went to it this week, if you're talking about something in a book, it's
Thank you, La Jatane. Philip Roth wrote Portnoy. Yes.
Okay, let's see. Stephanie McPeak Peterson does an amazing breakdown on The Shining in connection to it being symbolic about economics and the gold standard. Interesting. I saw her on Christopher Gardner's podcast one time. All right, my house was haunted after watching Rosemary's. I think the chat is a little behind us, and so that's part of what's happening here. Tommy Knockers, but it was in the book. Okay, so you weren't talking about the dance music party called Boiler Room. Got it. All right. So, well, let's see. I don't see. Is Steve here today?
Steve's here. Hi, Steve.
Here. Steve, can you just say something in the chat room about Freeman? Because I've gotten a number of emails. It's weird. Like a few months ago, I got emails, and then I got some more this week, and some comments on YouTube. I don't talk to Freeman, so lots of people keep asking me if Freeman is okay. So if you can just say whether he is okay or not, that would be amazing. All right. Is Mark the one who recommended going to, no, I recommended going to Rodhead, but Mark knew who Rodhead was, Laura. But that he was in, that someone from the chat room acknowledged that the DJs that I wanted to go see were good, made Laura want to go. So not that I said it, but that somebody else said it, right?
I think I don't think that's personal. It's always good to get confirmation.
Of course, I don't take it personally. I think it's funny. There is a web.
Oh, Jim wants to know. I have no idea about parental positions or anything like that. I come from a bloodline of sadistic fucktards, and I'm happy that it ends with me.
Jim, did you? I had asked you a question that I wanted to hear your response to before I answered the question to make sure I was answering the right question. And so the question was, are you asking my thoughts on each of my parents, or Dani's thoughts on each of her parents, or are you asking if we think the position that they had sex in when we were born affects our thought on our parents? That was the question I had asked, and then when you tell me, then I'll answer.
I mean, the position might affect which sperm gets pole position. You know, as far as like how they're ordered in the scrotum and like in what order they release. I feel like that would make sense.
Did you ever see the meme of all the sperm swimming towards the egg, and there was one way out ahead of the others, and it said Michael Phelps on it. I love that meme.
I missed it, but did you see they posted some video this week of like some nanobot that goes in and helps some like slow, lame retard sperm like swim his way to the top? And they're like, what an amazing technological advancement! Like, yay, let's give birth to more deformed retards.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Sorry, not sorry.
Okay. So I think that like I certainly think probably like how your parents connect with one another and how they like just energetically and emotionally, but also relate to positions in sex. And so I do think that has some determination. It has some effect on the energy of the child, right? Like I'm sure that is probably true. So I think there's some level of that is probably right, but I'm still not sure about if you're asking how I relate. Like my thoughts on each of my parents is like, they're both fucking mashugana in most ways, but each of them have one or two things about them that are really unique and special, and that make me have a lot of appreciation for them. Even though the other things create a lot of challenges. And I am certain that they both love me, even though they have both tested my patience at extreme levels. So those are my thoughts on my parents. But I don't know if you meant that the position affects how I feel about them or not. I don't know if that does or not.
Freeman is okay. Actually, I haven't heard that. Doesn't the egg only open for the sperm it chooses? I thought it was just the fastest and the first.
Oh, it's a vibrational thing, right? So I think it's exactly the same as how people can reality jump or dimensional travel, or how the UFOs enter the firmament. Right? I think you have to be vibrating with something that is on the other side of the membrane in order to move through it. So you have to come into resonance with that on the other side of the wall in order to be able to move through the wall.
Eric Trinkline wants to know, what about the men who have babies?
Do I think past life livers come back as pets? Well, I don't know about pets.
I think she means lovers.
Past life lovers. I don't know about that. The only experience I've had with something like this is a couple of years after my grandmother died. We were in Africa and we saw a 2-week-old baby elephant. And when I saw the baby elephant, I knew it was my grandmother. Elephants aren't pets. They're like the sort of human of the desert or whatever. I don't know. Like maybe I think they're probably smarter than us. But when I looked at that baby elephant, I somehow knew it was my grandmother. I can't explain it. I haven't had a feeling like that ever before. Let's see. Why does Super Chat not work? Keep saying edit, try again. Nothing at all bad. No, I have no idea. Is Valley Girl movie craze over the original from 1983 or the remake? I don't know.
Are you new?
Hi, Mose.
We don't acknowledge remakes.
Are you
We're
new?
not millennials.
Are you new? Their position was obviously submissive. What about men who have babies? There you go. Their position was obviously submissive. I don't know. Okay. That's a good answer, Jim. You're content with that? Okay. Very good. Excellent. All right. Does anyone else have a question? This will begin our 10-second countdown. Yes, since the chat seems to be a little behind. Or do you have any questions for the people in the chat, Dani?
Nope, I'm just counting us down.
My dad has left the hospital and is in the ambulance or whatever on the way home.
Woo!
All right, let's see. Yes, that person is new, Dani.
Welcome. I'll be nicer next time, I promise.
All right, guys, I think we are at the end. Thank you. This was like the most normal thing I've gotten to really do all week. So it's been very hospital-y. So thanks for hanging, and we will be back next week. And I think that's all. I'll put those links in the description in just a few minutes, so you guys can check back if you want those links.
It's
All right.
the Raven. The
Huh?
Raven. The Raven.
It's the
We
Raven.
got one last question. What's your favorite bird?
Oh, what's my favorite bird?
You have 5 seconds.
I the ones that there's kind of like that. I don't even know what they're called, but like I like owls.
We did it!
Yay!
Bye, guys.